What if I told you that everything you think you know about reality might be an illusion, a fleeting glimpse of just one possibility in an infinite sea of possibilities? What if at this very moment you're not just living one life, but countless versions of yourself exist all at once, each inhabiting a different reality? It sounds like something straight out of science fiction, but it's actually rooted in one of the most mind-bending ideas in all of physics: quantum superposition. You've probably heard of Schrödinger's cat, the famous thought experiment where a cat in a box is both alive and dead until someone looks inside. But what if that isn't just a quirky laboratory puzzle? What if it's actually a clue to the true nature of existence itself? And what if you, me, and everyone we know are living inside that box? This isn't just some abstract theory for physicists to debate behind closed doors. This idea challenges everything we assume about our lives, our choices, and even our sense of self. Think about the moments that defined you, the job you took, the person you fell in love with, the path you didn't choose. We often look back and wonder, what if? But superposition suggests there's no need to wonder, because somewhere, in some layer of reality, all those what-ifs are actually happening. You're living those other lives right now, in parallel dimensions you simply haven't noticed yet. It's a concept so profound it touches not just science, but philosophy, identity, and the very fabric of what it means to be conscious. In this video, we're going to unravel this extraordinary possibility together. We'll explore how quantum physics might not just describe tiny particles, but could hold the key to understanding our entire existence. From the double-slit experiment to the role of consciousness in shaping reality, we're diving into one of the most fascinating and controversial ideas at the frontier of science and futurism. This is more than a theory, it's a journey into the unknown, a chance to rethink your place in the cosmos. So if you've ever felt like there's more to life than meets the eye, you're about to discover just how right you might be. To really grasp what this means for all of us, we need to go back to the source, Schrödinger's famous and famously unfortunate cat. The year was 1935, and physicist Erwin Schrödinger was actually deeply frustrated. He was trying to show how absurd the emerging ideas in quantum mechanics sounded when you applied them to the large-scale world we live in. He wanted to highlight a paradox, not propose a reality. So he devised a thought experiment that was as simple as it was brilliant. Picture a perfectly sealed box. Inside it, we place a live cat, a tiny amount of a radioactive substance, a Geiger counter, and a hammer positioned above a vial of deadly poison. Now here's the quantum twist. That radioactive particle has a 50-50 chance of decaying within 1 hour. According to the rules of quantum mechanics, that particle exists in a superposition. It is both decayed and not decayed at the same time. It's in two states at once, but this state is tied to our lethal contraption. If the particle decays, the Geiger counter detects it, triggers the hammer, which breaks the vial, releasing the poison and killing the cat. If the particle does not decay, none of that happens and the cat remains perfectly healthy. So, if the particle is in a superposition of both states, then the entire system inside the box must be too. Until someone opens the box and looks inside, the cat is both alive and dead. It's not that we don't know which it is. The theory states that the cat itself exists in this blurred, probabilistic state of alive and dead. It's only at the moment of observation, the moment you lift the lid and peer in, that this superposition collapses into a single, definite reality. You either find a very relieved living cat or a tragically deceased one. Your act of looking forced the universe to make a choice. This is the core of what's called wave function collapse. Think of the wave function as a mathematical description of all the possible states of a quantum system. It's a wave of potential outcomes spreading out like ripples in a pond. For our cat, that wave describes 100% alive and 100% dead simultaneously. It's a bizarre concept that our classical brains struggle to visualize. But this isn't just a story about a cat. It's a powerful analogy for the behavior of all quantum particles, like electrons and photons. They don't have a single location or state until they are measured. They exist as a cloud of probability. The double-slit experiment, for instance, shows this beautifully, where a single particle seems to pass through two slits at once and interfere with itself, behaving like a wave of possibilities until someone tries to catch it in the act, forcing it to pick a single path. Schrödinger meant this to be a criticism, a way of saying, look how ridiculous this quantum theory is if we take it to its logical conclusion. But instead of ending the debate, his cat became the very symbol of it. It perfectly illustrates the profound chasm between the quantum world, where things can be in multiple places at once, and our classical world, where things seem solid, definite, and reliable. The cat in the box forces us to ask a terrifying and exhilarating question: where is the line? When does the weirdness stop? Does it stop at the level of atoms, or does it permeate everything, including us? So to truly understand this idea that we might all be in a superposition, we need to get comfortable with the basic rules of the quantum world, because they are nothing like the rules we experience in our everyday lives. Think about a baseball. If you throw it, you can follow its path, you can measure its speed, its position. It's a definite object in a definite place. But if that baseball were a quantum particle, like an electron, everything changes. It wouldn't have a single location or a single path. Instead, it would exist as a cloud of possibilities, a probability wave. This wave isn't a physical thing like an ocean wave. It's a mathematical description that tells us the likelihood of finding that particle at any given point if we were to look for it. This is the first core concept, particles as probability waves. Before any measurement, an electron isn't here or there. It's everywhere it could possibly be, all at once, with each possible location having a certain probability. It's only when we set up a detector or attempt to observe it that this spread-out wave of potential suddenly snaps into a single, definite point. This is the infamous collapse of the wave function. The act of observation itself seems to force the particle to choose a reality from its menu of options. This leads directly to the measurement problem, which is one of the biggest unsolved puzzles in physics. Why does measurement cause this collapse? What exactly counts as a measurement? Is it a conscious observer, or simply any interaction with the larger environment? This bizarre behavior is famously demonstrated by the double-slit experiment. Imagine a barrier with two thin, parallel slits cut into it. We fire a stream of electrons one at a time at this barrier. On the other side is a screen that lights up wherever an electron hits it. Now, if electrons behaved like tiny baseballs, you'd expect them to go through one slit or the other and create two clusters of dots on the screen behind the slits. But that's not what happens. Instead, the dots on the screen build up to form an interference pattern, a series of light and dark bands. This is the kind of pattern you get when waves interfere with each other, like ripples on a pond. It's as if each individual electron is going through both slits at the same time and interfering with itself. The electron is acting like a wave of possibilities. But here's where it gets even stranger. If you place a detector at the slits to see which one the electron actually goes through, the interference pattern instantly disappears. The electrons suddenly behave like good little particles again, creating two simple clusters behind the slits. The mere act of trying to observe the electron's path forces it to pick one, collapsing its wave like nature. It's as if the electron knows it's being watched. This isn't just true for electrons, it's a fundamental property of all quantum objects. Now, let's add another layer of weirdness: quantum entanglement. This is what Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance. Imagine you have two electrons that are created together or interact in a specific way. They become entangled, meaning their fates are linked, no matter how far apart they are separated. If you measure the property of one, say, its spin, you instantly know the corresponding property of the other. It's as if they are two parts of a single system. This connection appears to happen faster than the speed of light, which seems to violate the rules of classical physics. Entanglement suggests that at a fundamental level, the universe is deeply interconnected in ways we are only beginning to fathom. These concepts, particles as waves, the power of observation, and spooky entanglement form the wild and counterintuitive foundation upon which the incredible idea of universal superposition is built. So we're left with this massive divide, a chasm between two sets of rules for reality. On one side, we have the quantum realm, where particles effortlessly exist in multiple states at once. On the other, our familiar classical world, where everything appears solid, singular, and definite. The monumental question then becomes, where is the boundary? At what exact point does this bizarre quantum behavior stop and our ordinary reality take over? This is the central puzzle Schrödinger was pointing to with his cat, and it's the very hurdle we must overcome if we are to seriously consider that we ourselves might be in a superposition. For a long time, the prevailing assumption was that this transition happened very quickly. Quantum weirdness was thought to be incredibly fragile, reserved for the smallest, coldest, and most isolated systems. The moment a quantum object interacts with its environment, a process called decoherence, it's like the universe itself performs a measurement. All those shimmering possibilities seem to vanish, collapsing into the one concrete outcome we actually see. This is why we don't witness baseballs being in two places at once or cats being both alive and dead. Their constant interactions with air molecules, light, and the warmth of the room would instantly destroy any quantum coherence. Schrödinger's cat wasn't a proposal, it was a reductio ad absurdum argument, a way of saying, if quantum theory is truly universal, then it leads to this impossible conclusion, so therefore it must break down somewhere before it gets to this scale. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if the boundary isn't where we thought? This is where modern science begins to get incredibly interesting. Physicists have been pushing the limits, attempting to see just how large an object can be and still exhibit quantum behavior like superposition, and the results are shaking the foundations. They started small, of course, with particles and atoms, but then they moved to larger molecules. In groundbreaking experiments, scientists have now placed molecules composed of hundreds of atoms into a state of superposition. They fired these large molecules through double-slit apparatuses and watched as they create interference patterns, proving that even something made of thousands of protons, neutrons, and electrons can, under the right conditions, behave like a wave and pass through two slits at the same time. The key phrase is under the right conditions. To achieve this, these experiments are marvels of isolation. They are conducted in extreme vacuums, colder than the void of deep space, and shielded from any tiny vibration or stray electromagnetic field. They are designed to fight off decoherence, to protect the fragile quantum state long enough to observe it, and it works. This tells us something profound. Quantum mechanics doesn't have a stated size limit. There's no line in the rulebook that says anything larger than X nanometers must behave classically. The theory itself seems to allow for the possibility of macroscopic superposition. The challenge isn't a law of physics forbidding it. The challenge is one of engineering, of creating an environment quiet enough to hear the quantum whisper over the relentless roar of the classical world. This changes the entire context of Schrödinger's paradox. His thought experiment wasn't wrong, it was just ahead of its time. He highlighted the apparent absurdity of scaling quantum effects, and now science is actively investigating that very scaling. The cat is no longer just a criticism, it has become a goalpost. Can we, one day, create a superposition of a living organism? What about a virus? We've already done it with molecules approaching the size of some viruses. The gap is closing. This research isn't about putting a cat in a box. It's about understanding the fundamental nature of reality and asking if the conscious observer us is somehow special, or if we too are subject to the same quantum rules, living in a state of blurred potential until something or someone looks our way. So if the science suggests there's no fundamental size limit to superposition, and that our everyday reality emerges from this quantum foundation, we're left with a monumental question: what happens during that so-called collapse? When an observation forces a single outcome from a sea of possibilities, where do all those other potential outcomes go? One of the most radical and compelling answers was proposed in 1957 by a brilliant young physicist named Hugh Everett III. His doctoral thesis offered a solution so elegant and yet so utterly staggering that it was largely ignored for decades. It's called the many worlds interpretation, and it proposes a simple, breathtaking idea: the wave function never collapses. Not ever. Instead, every single possible outcome of a quantum event actually happens. It just happens in a newly branched off parallel universe. Think of reality not as a single linear path, but as a tree that is constantly, infinitely branching. At every fork in the road, at every tiny quantum event where more than one outcome is possible, the entire universe splits. In one branch, the radioactive particle decays. In another, it doesn't. One universe contains a living cat and another contains a deceased one, and crucially, both are equally real. There is no privileged outcome. According to many worlds, the act of measurement isn't a process that selects one reality and destroys the others. It's a process that correlates the state of the observer with the state of the system being observed. You, the person opening the box, become entangled with the cat. In one branch, you see a living cat and have the experience of relief. In the other branch, a version of you sees a dead cat and feels a wave of sadness. Both experiences are real, but they are now happening in separate, non-communicating universes. This elegantly sidesteps the entire measurement problem because there is no mysterious collapse. The mathematics of the wave function, which describes all possibilities, just keeps on evolving smoothly and deterministically, encompassing every branch. The reason we only perceive one outcome isn't because the others vanish. It's because our own consciousness splits along with the universe. We are only aware of the branch we find ourselves in. Every decision you've ever made, every random quantum event that ever occurred, from the trajectory of a single photon hitting your retina to the decay of an atom in a distant star, has contributed to the endless forking of cosmic paths. This means there is a universe where you took that different job offer. There's a universe where you never met your partner. There's a universe where a different candidate won every election, and another where dinosaurs never went extinct. The number of parallel worlds is not just large, it is truly infinite, branching out from every Planck time, every moment of time so short it is the fundamental unit of the cosmos. Visualizing this can feel impossible, but imagine a tree where the trunk represents the moment of the Big Bang. As time moves forward, that trunk grows upward, but with every quantum possibility, it sprouts new branches. Those branches themselves sprout more branches, and so on, creating a canopy of reality so dense and vast that it contains every possible history and every possible future. We are not leaves fixed to a single twig. We are the growth itself, our consciousness tracing a single, winding path through the immeasurable foliage, utterly unaware of the other paths we are simultaneously taking. This isn't science fiction's idea of traveling between dimensions. These worlds are fundamentally separate. They are part of a larger multiverse, a quantum meta-reality where everything that can happen does happen. This brings us to one of the most profound and controversial implications of all, the role of consciousness itself. If the universe truly exists as a shimmering haze of possibilities until an observation is made, what exactly qualifies as an observer? Is it a sophisticated scientific instrument? Is it any interaction with the environment? Or does it require something more, something with awareness? This question leads us directly to a bold and fascinating idea known as quantum consciousness. a theory that suggests our minds are not just passive observers of reality but active participants in its creation. At the heart of this concept is the work of renowned physicist Sir Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff. Together, they developed the Orchestrated Objective Reduction Theory, or ORCH. Penrose was deeply troubled by the measurement problem in quantum mechanics. He was also convinced that human consciousness possessed qualities that couldn't be explained by classical, deterministic computing things like intuition, understanding, and the seemingly non-algorithmic nature of creative thought. He proposed that the answer might lie in the bizarre world of quantum physics. Their theory suggests that within the neurons of our brains, specifically inside structures called microtubules, quantum computations are taking place. Microtubules are tiny protein filaments that form part of the cell's skeleton, and Hameroff proposed they are organized in a way that could protect fragile quantum states from the warm, noisy environment of the brain. According to ORCH, these microtubules can host quantum superpositions. A single electron, or something even more exotic, could be in two states at once within your own mind. This superposition persists until it reaches a certain threshold of complexity, at which point it undergoes an objective collapse, and this momentary event is what gives rise to a single, definite conscious experience, a moment of awareness. Each collapse is a frame of consciousness, and the sequence of these collapses is the stream of our thoughts. This is a staggering proposition. It means your brain isn't just a biological computer processing information. It's a quantum device constantly collapsing probabilities into reality. In this view, you are not just an observer of the quantum world, you are a generator of it moment by moment. Your consciousness is the very thing that forces the universe to make a choice. This provides a potential solution to the measurement problem by placing the power of collapse squarely within the act of conscious observation. It implies that without a conscious entity to experience it, the universe might remain in a fog of unrealized potential. Now, let's connect this back to the idea of universal superposition and the many worlds interpretation. If consciousness is indeed a quantum process that collapses wave functions, then every time you make a decision, from what to have for breakfast to a major life choice, you might be navigating a literal branching of realities. Your conscious observation selects one path from the infinite menu of possibilities, and all the other potentials continue their existence in parallel branches, completely unaware of the path you took. You are in a perpetual state of choosing your reality. However, it's crucial to understand that this theory is far from settled science. The ORCH proposal faces significant challenges from the broader physics and neuroscience communities. The primary criticism is decoherence. The brain is a warm, wet, and chaotic place. Maintaining a coherent quantum state, which requires extreme cold and isolation in human-made experiments, seems nearly impossible in such an environment. Critics argue that any quantum superposition in microtubules would be destroyed by its surroundings in a fraction of a nanosecond far too quickly to have any bearing on the relatively slow processes of neural firing and conscious thought. They maintain that classical physics is more than sufficient to explain the brain's workings, yet the allure of connecting mind to quantum mechanics remains powerful. It offers a compelling narrative that bridges the gap between the objective world of physics and the subjective world of experience. It places us not as mere spectators in a predetermined universe, but as active agents in a cosmic dance of possibility, with our inner lives intimately woven into the fabric of reality itself. Whether this theory is ultimately proven correct or not, it forces us to confront the deepest questions about who we are and our relationship with the universe we inhabit. Now, let's take this a step further into the realm of speculative futurism. If our reality is fundamentally built on a quantum foundation of probabilities and observation, could this entire system be programmed? This line of thinking brings us to another mind-bending concept, the simulation hypothesis. Popularized by figures like Nick Bostrom and Elon Musk, this idea suggests that our universe, with all its richness and complexity, might not be base reality. Instead, it could be an incredibly advanced simulation, much like a hyper-realistic video game running on a computer of unimaginable power. Think about it from a purely computational standpoint. Simulating an entire universe in perfect, deterministic detail would require infinite processing power. Every single atom, every subatomic particle, would need its position, velocity, and state calculated and tracked at all times. The energy and resources required for such a feat would be astronomical, even for a civilization vastly more advanced than our own. But what if there was a more efficient way? What if the simulation didn't render everything in full detail all the time? This is where quantum superposition offers a brilliantly elegant solution. In this scenario, superposition isn't a weird physical property, it's a programming shortcut. It's a form of lazy loading or procedural generation on a cosmic scale. The universe's source code only needs to calculate and define the precise state of a system when it is being observed. Until that moment, it can simply exist as a probability wave, a line of code that says, this thing has a 50% chance of being here and a 50% chance of being there. It remains in a fuzzy, undefined state, saving enormous computational resources. The moment an observer, whether a conscious being or a measuring device, looks at it, the simulation performs the calculation, collapses the wave function, and renders a definite outcome. The cat is either alive or dead because the processor finally decided which one to display to the user. This fits perfectly with the double-slit experiment we discussed earlier. When no one is watching which slit the electron goes through, the simulation doesn't bother calculating a specific path. It just allows the wave of probability to propagate, resulting in an interference pattern. But the instant a detector is placed at the slit, the simulation is forced to render a specific outcome for that observation, and the interference pattern vanishes. You can almost imagine the cosmic computer saying, "Oh, someone's looking. I'd better calculate which one this electron actually went through." This perspective transforms the role of consciousness from a mysterious collapse mechanism to a user input. Our act of observation is what sends a request to the server, prompting it to generate the reality we experience. This could explain the so-called measurement problem, not as a physics paradox, but as a feature of the simulation's architecture. It's a breathtakingly efficient design, vast regions of empty space, the detailed history of uninhabited planets, the precise state of every molecule in the depths of a star. None of it needs to be fully rendered unless someone or something is there to see it. It's the ultimate optimization for a universe-sized rendering engine. When we connect this to futuristic technology concepts we're already developing, the parallels become even more striking. We are, right now, creating increasingly complex virtual realities and training powerful artificial intelligence models. These AIs often don't store every piece of data. They learn patterns and generate outputs based on probabilities. And in video games, developers use level of detail techniques to render only what the player is currently looking at, saving processing power for the immediate experience. The simulation hypothesis, viewed through the lens of quantum optimization, suggests that our entire reality might be operating on a vastly more sophisticated version of these very same principles. It proposes that the quantum weirdness we struggle to understand isn't a bug in the universe. It might be a glimpse into the source code. So if this is all true, what would it actually feel like to live inside a perpetual state of quantum possibility? How would this grand cosmic theory manifest in the mundane moments of our daily existence? The answer might be that we're already experiencing it. We just don't have the framework to recognize it. Imagine your morning routine. You wake up and face a simple choice: hit the snooze button or get out of bed. In a classical single reality view, you make one choice and that's that. but from a superposition perspective, that moment of decision is a branching point. In one universe, you enjoy 9 more minutes of blissful sleep. In another, you're already up and brewing coffee. Both versions of you are equally real, each experiencing a different start to their day, completely unaware of the other's timeline. Now scale that up. Every tiny, seemingly insignificant choice you make, the route you take to work, whether you check your email now or later, even the specific words you choose in a conversation, could be a point where realities diverge. Your life wouldn't be a single, linear storyline. It would be a vast, sprawling tree of interconnected narratives, with a new branch sprouting from every quantum possibility and conscious decision. This means the version of you watching this video is just one iteration, the one that followed a specific chain of events that led you here right now. But countless other versions of you took different turns, missed this video entirely, and are living out entirely different afternoons. This perspective can transform how we view our own pasts and the nagging feeling of what if. That career path you didn't take, that person you didn't call, that risky opportunity you passed on according to this view, those aren't lost possibilities. In other branches of reality, they are your lived experience. The you that became a musician instead of an accountant is out there practicing chords. The you that moved to a different country is currently navigating a foreign supermarket. There's a profound comfort in that. Regret might soften if we consider that no potential is ever truly wasted. It's simply being explored in a parallel reality. We might even find explanations for strange, common human experiences within this framework. Take déjà vu, for instance, that eerie, sudden feeling that you've already lived through the present moment. Conventional explanations often attribute it to a minor brain glitch, a misfiring in memory processing. But what if it's something more? What if it's a fleeting, almost imperceptible resonance with a nearly identical moment in a parallel branch? A momentary blurring of the boundaries between very similar worlds, giving you a split-second glimpse of another you experiencing the same thing. It wouldn't be a memory of your past, but a faint echo from your contemporary self in a neighboring reality. Consider the phenomenon of intuition or a gut feeling. That sudden, unexplainable knowledge that you should avoid a certain street or take a different flight. We often chalk it up to our subconscious processing subtle cues faster than our conscious mind. But could it also be interpreted as a subtle quantum leakage, a faint signal from a branching future where that decision led to a negative outcome, somehow influencing the you in this branch to steer clear? It's as if your broader, multi-dimensional self is looking out for you, guiding this particular instance away from potential harm. This gets even more fascinating when we apply it to human relationships. Every meaningful connection is a tapestry woven from countless decisions and chance encounters. In a superposed reality, every relationship exists in a multitude of forms. There's a universe where you married your high school sweetheart, another where you never met your current partner at all. There are branches where a first date went slightly differently, leading to a parting of ways, and others where a missed argument solidified a bond. The people in our lives are constants across many worlds, but the nature of our connections with them blossoms into infinite variations. It suggests that the bonds we form are not fragile, singular things, but robust, multi-dimensional patterns echoing across the multiverse. Living with this awareness wouldn't necessarily lead to paralysis, fearing that every choice splinters reality. Instead, it could foster an incredible sense of freedom and radical acceptance. The pressure to make the one right choice evaporates. Every path is taken, every lesson is learned somewhere. It allows you to approach your decisions not with anxiety but with curiosity. You can choose to see your life in this branch not as the only story, but as the one you are currently experiencing, and you can actively choose to make it a compelling one. Your focus shifts from worrying about the paths not taken to fully inhabiting the path you are on, knowing that the other yous are having their own adventures and you are free to have yours. This idea of a branching, simultaneous existence forces us to completely rethink one of the most fundamental aspects of our experience, time itself. We are conditioned to see time as a river flowing in one direction from a fixed past through a fleeting present and into an unknown future. But if the many worlds interpretation is correct, this linear view is an illusion, a trick of our singular perspective. In a superposed multiverse, the past, present, and future might not be a sequence at all, but a vast, static landscape where every possible event exists eternally, and our journey through it is what we perceive as the flow of time. Think of it not as a river, but as a colossal, unchanging block. Physicists call this the block universe theory. In this model, all of time, every moment from the Big Bang to the heat death of the universe and every possibility in between already exists. Your birth, your first day of school, you watching this video right now, and every potential future are all equally real and fixed within this block. Our conscious awareness is simply a spotlight moving along this fourth dimension, illuminating one slice of the block at a time, creating the subjective experience of a moving now. But from a God's eye view outside of time, everything is just there. This aligns eerily well with the mathematics of general relativity, where time is treated as a dimension much like space. There is no privileged present in Einstein's equations. Now, let's inject quantum superposition into this block universe. It's not a block with a single, determined history. It's a block containing every possible branching history. Every choice, every quantum dice roll creates a new layer, a new thread woven into the fabric of this eternal now. This means that your future isn't unwritten. All possible versions of your future are already written. You're not creating your destiny. You're navigating a path through a pre-existing multiverse of destinies. Your feeling of free will is the experience of which branch your consciousness follows next. This has a startling and deeply personal implication for the most certain event in any life, death. This leads us to one of the most controversial thought experiments emerging from these ideas, quantum immortality. The premise is as unsettling as it is simple. If every possible outcome of a quantum event occurs in some branch, then there is always a branch, however statistically improbable, in which you survive a life-threatening situation. Imagine you agree to play a deadly game of Russian roulette with a revolver that has 1,000,000 chambers and only one bullet. You pull the trigger. In the overwhelming majority of resulting universes, the bullet fires and that version of you ceases to exist. But in one universe, the chamber is empty. Your consciousness isn't extinguished. It follows that one branch where you miraculously survive. From your first-person perspective, you would only ever experience the realities in which you continue to live. You would pull the trigger and hear a click again and again, each time surviving against absurd odds. To an outside observer in any one branch, you would eventually die. But your stream of consciousness would always find the path of continued existence. This isn't about invincibility. It's about the subjective experience of consciousness being tied to branches where it persists. You would eventually die of old age in every branch, but your conscious experience would always be the one that, through a near-infinite series of unlikely survivals, made it to that point. The implications of this are enough to short-circuit the brain. It suggests that from a subjective viewpoint, you could potentially live for thousands or even millions of years, simply by always experiencing the timeline where you avoid fatal accidents, diseases, and disasters through a continuous sequence of unbelievable luck. Your life would feel charmed, a series of near misses and miraculous recoveries that you attribute to fortune, but which are actually an inevitable consequence of your consciousness navigating the probability tree of the multiverse. This radically alters our perception of life and death. Death becomes not an end, but a branching point where your awareness simply stops following that particular path. For the version of you that dies, the experience is real and final, but for the overarching tapestry of your existence, life continues in other branches. This doesn't make death less significant for the individuals in a specific branch, but it does propose that consciousness itself might be a much more resilient and persistent phenomenon than we ever imagined, intertwined with the very structure of a probabilistic reality. It forces us to ask what we truly are. Are we the biological organism that lives and dies once, or are we the conscious pattern that experiences every possible life it can? If the fabric of reality is truly this malleable, this responsive to observation, then the next logical step is to ask how we might one day learn to manipulate it intentionally. We're already taking the first tentative steps with a technology that directly harnesses the power of superposition, quantum computing. A classical computer, like the one you're using right now, operates on bits. A bit is a binary state, a 1 or a 0, on or off. It's the definitive classical world translated into silicon. A quantum computer, however, uses quantum bits or qubits. And a qubit is a glorious embodiment of superposition. It isn't just a 1 or a 0, it can be both at the same time in a complex blend of probabilities. This single difference is what grants quantum computers their potentially universe-altering power. Think of trying to find your way through an immense maze. A classical computer would have to try each path one by one, a tedious and time-consuming process. A quantum computer, with its qubits in superposition, could effectively explore all possible paths through the maze simultaneously. It's not performing calculations faster, it's performing a near infinite number of calculations in parallel within a single, entangled state. This allows it to solve certain types of problems like cracking complex encryption, modeling intricate molecular interactions for drug discovery, or optimizing global supply chains that would take a classical computer longer than the age of the universe to solve. These machines are, in essence, reality simulators, using controlled superpositions to explore possibilities we can only dream of. But what if we could move beyond computing? What if we could build devices that interact with superposition not in a shielded lab, but in our macroscopic world? Imagine a tool, perhaps a generation or two beyond today's quantum sensors, that doesn't just measure a quantum state but allows a conscious observer to briefly hold two macroscopic possibilities in their mind. We could call it a reality lens or a state viewer. This wouldn't be a time machine looking at the past, but a device that lets you peer sideways into the probability space of the present moment. You might point it at a simple object, a coin that's just been flipped. Through the viewfinder, you wouldn't see a blur. You might perceive a ghostly double image, one showing heads and another showing tails, superimposed over each other. The device wouldn't collapse the wave function. It would somehow allow your visual cortex to entangle with it, granting you a direct, conscious experience of the superposition itself. The moment you look away, your classical brain would snap back to perceiving a single, definite outcome, but you would carry the memory of having seen the potentiality itself. Now take that concept to its ultimate extreme. Could we develop a technology that allows for conscious navigation between these branches? This ventures into the realm of pure speculation, but it's a fascinating thought experiment. A quantum dial or a path selector wouldn't move you through space but through state space. It would be a device that identifies the specific quantum fluctuations that led to a branching event and allows you to, for lack of a better word, tune your consciousness to resonate with a different branch. Want to see the outcome where you chose the blue shirt instead of the black one this morning? You adjust the dial. The room around you shimmers, and for a split second, you see two overlapping realities, one where your coffee mug is on the left side of the desk and another where it's on the right. You focus your intent and your awareness locks onto the desired branch. To everyone else in that branch, you've always been there. Your sudden memory of a different past is just an odd moment of déjà vu. The implications of such a technology would dismantle our entire concept of identity and responsibility. If you could switch to a branch where a past mistake was never made, does that absolve the version of you that made it? Are you still you if your continuous stream of consciousness is now woven from experiences across multiple timelines? This wouldn't be mere escapism. It would be the ultimate expression of agency over one's life, but it could also lead to a profound existential loneliness, knowing that every choice simultaneously creates a universe of abandonment. The ethical and philosophical dilemmas would be as vast as the multiverse itself. While such a device remains firmly in the domain of science fiction, its theoretical foundation is built upon the same quantum principles we are only beginning to understand, forcing us to consider that the future of technology may not just be about building better tools, but about learning to sculpt the very nature of reality itself. This radical rethinking of reality wouldn't just change our personal perspective, it would send shockwaves through the very foundations of our society, forcing us to rebuild our concepts of law, morality, and personal responsibility from the ground up. Our entire justice system, for instance, is built on a linear model of cause and effect. A person commits a crime, and they are held accountable for that single, definite action. But in a branching multiverse, how do you prosecute a crime? Imagine a person commits a theft. In one branch, they are caught, arrested, and face a trial. But in the branch right next to it, a quantum fluctuation caused a guard to look the other way at the crucial moment, and the thief gets away clean. Both events are equally real. Does the thief in the branch where they weren't caught bear any responsibility for the actions of their other self? Can you punish one instance of a person for a crime committed by another version in a separate reality? The notion of a singular, accountable self begins to unravel. This leads us into a labyrinth of ethical dilemmas that would make any philosopher dizzy. If every possible action occurs in some branch, does that make any action truly wrong? If a person makes a terrible, harmful choice in one reality, but a benevolent one in another, how do we judge their character? Morality itself could become relative to the branch you're in, an unsettling thought that challenges the idea of universal ethics. We might have to shift from judging actions based on a single outcome to evaluating them based on the entire probability wave of choices, assessing a person's intent across the spectrum of their possible behaviors. A legal system might need to focus less on punishment for a singular act and more on guiding individuals away from branches where harmful decisions are more likely to be made, treating behavior as a probabilistic pattern rather than a fixed event. The concept of consequences would transform beyond recognition. Our entire society is built on the expectation that actions have direct, linear results. You study hard, you get a good job. You commit a crime, you go to jail. This framework of incentive and deterrent completely falls apart if every decision forks into a universe where the opposite outcome also exists. Why strive to be ethical if a version of you is unethical without repercussion? Why work hard if a version of you wins the lottery? This isn't just a personal crisis of motivation, it's a societal one. We would need to find new ways to assign value and meaning to our choices, perhaps by focusing on the quality of the specific reality we are consciously experiencing, and our duty to the well-being of the people within our own branch, knowing they are experiencing the consequences of our shared actions here and now. On a larger scale, how would governments and institutions even function? How do you create public policy for a population that is constantly fracturing? A law passed in one branch might not exist in another. Elections would have winners and losers in every possible combination, leading to parallel governments with completely different mandates. International relations would be a nightmare of conflicting treaties and diplomatic relations across countless worlds. The very idea of a shared, collective reality, the bedrock of human civilization, would dissolve. We might see the rise of a new form of governance focused on branch stability, trying to minimize drastic divergences to maintain some semblance of order, or perhaps a fatalistic acceptance that control is an illusion, and the role of leadership is simply to manage the local experience of one thread in an infinite tapestry. Ultimately, living in a confirmed multiverse would demand a new social contract, one based on radical empathy and a profound understanding of our interconnectedness. While we might be isolated in our individual branches, we are all part of a greater, multi-dimensional whole. The person you disagree with politically, the criminal who seems irredeemable, the loved one you lost, they all exist in other forms in other worlds. This could foster an incredible sense of compassion, knowing that no one's story is ever truly over and no potential is ever completely lost. It would challenge us to be kinder in this branch, to make better choices here, not because they are the only choices, but because this is the reality we are currently shaping together, and the well-being of the consciousness inhabiting this particular slice of the multiverse depends on it. Yet if we are to truly live with this idea, we must confront its most intimate and unsettling consequence, the complete unraveling of the self. We think of our identity as a stable, continuous story, the singular narrative of me. But if countless versions of us are living out every possible life, what does that story even mean? This isn't just a philosophical puzzle. It's a profound psychological challenge that strikes at the very core of who we believe ourselves to be. Imagine waking up every morning with the knowledge that the choices you agonized over, the traumas you survived, and the triumphs you celebrated are not your unique history. They are just one set of experiences on a near-infinite shelf. The version of you that got that promotion exists, but so does the one who was fired. The you that found courage exists alongside the you that was consumed by fear. This doesn't just dilute your personal history, it can shatter the foundation of your identity, leading to what we might call a multi-dimensional identity crisis. The most immediate effect could be a deep sense of insignificance or existential weightlessness. If every path is taken, then no single path carries any special meaning. The unique combination of events that made you, the specific struggles that built your resilience, the particular joys that shaped your heart, become just one random permutation in a cosmic lottery. Your life story, which feels so deeply personal and earned, could be seen as merely a statistical inevitability. This can lead to a paralyzing apathy or a feeling that your actions in this branch don't truly matter because another version of you is already doing the opposite. Why strive to overcome a challenge when a you in another world already has? Why work to repair a relationship when a parallel version of you never had the fight to begin with? The motivation that drives human ambition could evaporate under the sheer weight of infinite alternatives. This fragmentation of self also complicates our deepest relationships. The bonds we form with others feel sacred because they are unique, forged through shared, singular experiences. But in a multiverse, your relationship with someone is just one variation. There's a universe where you and your best friend never met, another where you betrayed them, another where they betrayed you. The profound connection you feel right now is from a God's eye view, just one thread in a vast tapestry of possible connections. This knowledge could make our bonds feel less special, more replaceable, as if the people we love are merely playing a role in this particular storyline with different actors in another. It could instill a constant, low-level anxiety, a wonder about whether the relationships in this branch are the best or truest versions, or if we're missing out on a deeper connection happening in a reality we cannot access. In this world of branching paths, the very human quest for authenticity becomes a frantic and perhaps impossible pursuit. We often define our true selves by our core values and consistent choices. But if you are also the person who made every opposite choice, then who is the authentic you? Is it the version that aligns with your current values, or is the concept of a core self an illusion? This can trigger a relentless and exhausting introspection, a constant second-guessing of every decision, not just for its consequences here, but for what it says about your fundamental character across the multiverse. You might find yourself asking, if I chose this but another me chose that, which choice reflects my real nature? The answer, terrifyingly, might be that there is no single real nature, only a spectrum of selves. The mental health implications of truly internalizing this perspective are significant. While it could offer comfort by alleviating regret, knowing that the path not taken is being walked by another you, it could just as easily fuel severe anxiety, depression, and dissociative disorders. The feeling of being real and grounded in a single, stable reality is a cornerstone of mental well-being. Challenging that foundation could lead to a state of chronic derealization, where the world feels illusory and your place in it feels arbitrary. The pressure to choose the right branch or constantly optimize your life to match some idealized version of yourself from another reality could be overwhelming, leading to perfectionism and decision paralysis on a colossal scale. After all, if every choice forks reality, the weight of that responsibility could be crushing. Ultimately, navigating this brave new world of the self would require a radical shift in psychology. We might need to move away from defining ourselves by our past choices and instead define ourselves by our present awareness and our intentions for this specific branch. The goal would no longer be to find the one true self, but to cultivate the best possible self in the reality we are consciously experiencing. It would be about making peace with the infinite and focusing on the finite, choosing to invest meaning and value in this particular life, with these particular people, not because it is the only one, but because it is the one we are living right now. Our sense of authenticity wouldn't come from a unique history, but from the genuine depth of our engagement with the present moment we inhabit. But what if we could turn this existential challenge into the greatest leap in connection ever imagined? If countless versions of us are constantly branching into new realities, the ultimate form of communication wouldn't be across distance, but across dimensions themselves. This isn't just about sending a faster text message. It's about the tantalizing possibility of contacting other versions of ourselves, of sharing knowledge and experience across the very fabric of the multiverse. The theoretical key to this mind-boggling idea might lie in a phenomenon we already know exists: quantum entanglement. Recall that spooky action at a distance, where two particles become linked in such a way that measuring the state of one instantly determines the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. In our single universe view, this is used for things like ultra-secure quantum encryption. But in a many-worlds reality, entanglement could be far more profound. Imagine if we could create an entangled pair of particles and then, through some yet unknown process, allow a quantum event to cause a branching of the universe. Theory suggests that those particles would remain entangled not just across space, but across the newly created branches of reality. You would have one particle in universe A and its entangled partner in universe B. Now the real magic begins. In universe A, a scientist could deliberately manipulate their particle, perhaps flipping its spin. Instantly, in universe B, the entangled partner's spin would flip as well. This wouldn't just be faster than light communication. This would be faster than reality communication, a signal that travels not through space but between worlds. The observer in universe B would see their particle change state for no apparent local reason, a clear signature that a message had been sent from a parallel existence. We could establish a simple binary code: one flip for yes, two flips for no, a sequence of flips for more complex information. This wouldn't be a telephone call with your other self. It would be more like receiving cosmic telegrams from another dimension, a slow, laborious, but utterly universe-shattering form of contact. Visualize the infrastructure for such a system. It wouldn't involve cell towers or fiber optic cables. Instead, vast, isolated facilities would house enormous arrays of entangled particles, each pair meticulously prepared and shielded from decoherence. These would be our multidimensional messaging stations. An operator wouldn't type on a keyboard. They would use precise magnetic fields or laser pulses to gently nudge their local particles into a new state, knowing that with each adjustment, they are sending ripples through the meta-structure of reality itself. The receiving station in another branch would have its own array, with particles flickering and changing in a seemingly random pattern that, when decoded, reveals a message from another version of civilization. The user interface might display these messages not as text on a screen, but as a shimmering, holographic weave of light, representing the probability waves of the incoming data stream itself. The implications for such a technology would completely redefine progress. A branch of reality that discovered a cure for a devastating disease could transmit the molecular blueprint to all the others. A universe on the brink of ecological collapse could receive schematics for clean energy technologies developed in a branch that prioritized science. We could share artistic movements, philosophical concepts, and entire histories, creating a collective knowledge base across the multiverse that would make our current internet look like a single, lonely library. This interconnected web of human experience would represent a form of cohesion and cooperation that transcends our classical understanding of society. We would no longer be isolated threads, but a consciously connected tapestry, learning from every possible mistake and celebrating every possible triumph, not just as a single species, but as a multi-dimensional civilization. The loneliness of being one conscious point in a vast cosmos would be replaced by the profound comfort of being a node in an infinite network of existence. Now imagine the profound impact this would have on the very soul of human expression, our art and our culture. If we truly internalize that every possibility is real, our entire creative foundation would shift from seeking a single truth to exploring a symphony of truths. The artist's role would transform from a creator of a definitive vision to a curator of infinite perspectives, a guide through the garden of forking paths. We might see the emergence of entirely new genres like superpositionism or multiversal expressionism, where a single canvas isn't a static image but a dynamic surface. Using advanced bistable pigments or integrated quantum display technology, a painting could literally shimmer between states, a portrait might flicker between the subject's youth and old age, or a landscape could gradually morph from a bustling metropolis to a wild, untamed forest, representing two equally real outcomes of a city council vote that happened decades ago. The artwork would no longer be a statement but a question, an invitation to contemplate the weight of every decision. Music would become a deeply personal and fluid experience. Composers could create probability-based symphonies where the melody branches at key moments based on subtle cues from the listener's own biometrics or even their mood. The same musical piece would sound triumphant one day and melancholic the next, not by your choice, but by reflecting your internal state back at you, revealing the emotional landscape of your other selves in parallel branches. We might have communal listening experiences where an entire audience's aggregated emotional response guides the orchestra's improvisation, creating a unique sonic event that could never be perfectly replicated, a temporary harmonic bridge between countless individual realities. But the most radical evolution would occur in storytelling. The classic narrative arc with a beginning, middle, and end would feel antiquated, a quaint relic of a simpler, single reality worldview. In its place, we'd see the rise of expansive, branching narratives not just in interactive video games, but in mainstream film and literature. Imagine a novel printed on a responsive e-paper that allows you, the reader, to make choices for the protagonist at crucial junctures. But unlike a choose-your-own-adventure book, the narrative wouldn't just follow your path. The pages would physically reconfigure to also show you glimpses of the other stories unfolding from the choices you didn't make. You'd turn the page and see faint, ghosted text describing a scene from the abandoned timeline, a constant reminder of the stories you chose to leave behind. This wouldn't be about finding the best ending. It would be about appreciating the beauty and tragedy of the entire possibility tree. This cultural shift would foster a new ethos, moving us away from our obsession with certainty and control and toward a profound embrace of uncertainty, potential, and multiplicity. Our heroes would no longer be the figures who pursued a single, unwavering destiny, but those who navigated the chaos of possibilities with wisdom, empathy, and grace. We might develop new forms of therapy focused not on healing a singular traumatic past, but on helping individuals reconcile with the other lives they might have lived, alleviating the anxiety of infinite choice by fostering a sense of peaceful presence in the current branch. Our very language would adapt, perhaps developing new tenses to discuss events that are happening elsewhere, or creating a richer vocabulary to describe the subtle resonance between nearly identical worlds. This wouldn't lead to chaos, but to a deeper, more nuanced understanding of the human condition, one that celebrates the complex, multifaceted, and ultimately infinite nature of our existence. Now, let's project these ideas onto one of the most fundamental structures of our society, our education system. If the next generation is to grow up in a world that understands itself as a multiverse of possibilities, their entire approach to learning would need a radical transformation. The old model of memorizing fixed facts and a single historical narrative would become instantly obsolete. Instead, we'd see the rise of a new pedagogical philosophy, one built not on certainty but on potential. Imagine a classroom where the primary skill being taught isn't rote repetition but probabilistic thinking. From a very young age, children wouldn't just learn arithmetic, they'd learn to calculate the likelihood of outcomes. They wouldn't just study history as a fixed timeline, they'd explore it as a branching tree of pivotal moments, discussing not only what did happen, but what so easily could have happened and the cascading effects of those alternative paths. The core of this new curriculum would be a subject we might call quantum literacy. This wouldn't be an advanced physics course for university students, but a foundational class for every child, as fundamental as reading or writing. It would start with simple, relatable concepts. Teachers might use interactive simulations where students can input a choice, like sharing a toy or keeping it for themselves, and watch as a screen visualizes the immediate branching of possible futures, each with its own set of emotional and social consequences for their digital avatar. They'd learn that every action creates a spectrum of realities, fostering an early and intuitive understanding of both their immense agency and their profound responsibility within their own local branch. This shifts education's goal from creating adults who know all the answers to nurturing individuals who are comfortable asking the right questions and navigating the uncertainty of the answers. Critical thinking would evolve into multi-perspective analysis. Literature classes wouldn't just analyze a character's single motivation. They'd map out the character's decision tree, exploring every possible choice they could have made at key junctures and writing essays on the thematic implications of each abandoned path. Science fairs would feature projects where students don't just present a single experimental result, but display the entire probability distribution of their results across multiple theoretical branches, explaining why their observed outcome was the most likely one in this particular reality. This teaches a humility that is often missing from classical science, the recognition that our observed truth is just one data point in a much larger set of truths. We would also develop sophisticated tools to help students visualize their own future branches. Think of it as advanced career counseling meets quantum physics. A student struggling to choose a career path wouldn't just take a personality quiz, they'd sit down with a pathway projector. Using a blend of their personal data, historical trend analysis, and quantum probability algorithms, this tool wouldn't predict one future. It would generate a vibrant, interactive holographic tree of their most probable life paths. They could zoom in on a branch where they become an engineer, seeing the required courses, the potential cities they might live in, and even statistical data on life satisfaction from other branches with similar parameters. They could then compare it to a branch where they pursue art, not as a fantasy, but as a tangible, mapped-out possibility with its own set of challenges and rewards. This doesn't make the choice easier, but it makes it infinitely more informed. It teaches young adults that they are not choosing a single destiny, but selecting which garden of forking paths they wish to consciously tend. The goal of education would no longer be to prepare a child for one specific future, but to equip them with the resilience, adaptability, and wisdom to thrive in any of the futures they might find themselves creating. Now, imagine trying to run a global economy within this framework of infinite possibility. Our entire financial system is built on the bedrock of scarcity and singular outcomes. A barrel of oil has one price. A company's stock is either up or down at the closing bell. But in a world of confirmed superposition, this classical model of economics would shatter, giving way to something far more fluid and bizarre. We'd have to invent entirely new systems of value, trading not just in what is, but in what could be. The most fundamental shift would be in the nature of currency itself. Our current money represents a claim on a finite amount of goods and services in a single, definite reality. A multiversal currency would need to represent a claim on potential outcomes across a spectrum of realities. We might see the rise of probability-backed currency, or probs. Unlike a dollar, which has a fixed value, one prob wouldn't be worth a set amount. Its value would be tied to the likelihood of a specific, desirable future event occurring across the most probable branches. For instance, a currency note might be issued by a central bank whose value is pegged to the probability that global wheat yields will be above average in the next harvest season. As quantum sensors and prediction algorithms constantly update that probability, say, from 60% to 70%, the value of that prob would fluctuate in real time. You wouldn't just be trading money, you'd be literally trading on your confidence in the future. Saving for retirement would become an exercise in quantum portfolio management, balancing your assets across a range of currencies, each tied to different favorable outcomes, a hedge against your own reality branching in an unfavorable direction. This leads to the most radical marketplace imaginable, the potentiality exchange. This wouldn't be a stock market for companies, but a futures market for reality itself. Here, traders wouldn't buy and sell shares of a company. They'd buy and sell contracts on the probability of specific events happening in adjacent branches. Imagine a technology firm on the verge of a breakthrough in fusion energy. On the potentiality exchange, you could purchase a contract that pays out if their research succeeds in at least 30% of the calculated nearby branches. The value of that contract would soar or crash based on the latest quantum calculated odds. We might see speculators making fortunes by accurately predicting the branch likelihood of a political election outcome or the success of a movie franchise. This market would be the ultimate expression of high risk, high reward, because you're not just betting on one outcome, you're assessing the entire probability wave of human endeavor. Businesses would need to adapt to survive in this new environment, leading to the rise of entirely new industries. The most crucial service would be quantum risk management. Traditional insurance, which protects against a single negative event in one reality, would be useless. Instead, corporations would hire quantum risk firms to analyze their probability waves. These firms would use powerful quantum computers to model millions of branching futures, identifying not just risks but opportunities. They wouldn't say, "There's a 10% chance your factory floods." They would say, "In 18.7% of branches, your factory floods, but in 12.3% of those branches, the disaster creates a supply shortage that allows you to dominate the market in the recovering branches." Here is a strategy to minimize the damage in the first set and capitalize on the opportunity in the second. Business strategy becomes a multi-dimensional chess game played across the multiverse. This gives rise to the most fascinating new profession, the reality consultant. These wouldn't be motivational speakers. They would be highly trained experts who help individuals and organizations navigate their branching paths. A reality consultant might work with a couple considering a move to a new city. Using advanced branching simulators, the consultant wouldn't predict the future. They would map out the most probable branches resulting from the move and the most probable branches resulting from staying. They could show the clients a visualization. If you move, there's a 60% probability cluster of branches where your career flourishes but your relationship strains due to stress. If you stay, there's a 70% cluster where your relationship deepens but you experience professional stagnation. Our job is to help you implement strategies now, better communication habits, different job search tactics, to try and steer your local branch towards the most desirable clusters within each possibility tree. They help you not choose your destiny, but sculpt the probability of your desired destinies. Even manufacturing and logistics would transform. Why keep all your inventory in one reality? We might see the emergence of branch-based supply chains. A company might manufacture a product and then, using some form of quantum distribution, allocate percentages of its inventory to different branches based on projected demand within each one. A toy company might send 70% of a popular new doll to branches where marketing data shows high household disposable income, and send the remaining 30% to branches where a recent cultural trend has increased its desirability. They're not just moving products through space, but through state space, optimizing not for one market, but for a multiverse of markets simultaneously. The very concept of a global economy expands into a multi-branch economic network, a web of production and consumption woven across the infinite tapestry of reality. This concept of infinite branching forces us to completely reimagine our most personal connections, our relationships, and the very nature of love. If every interaction spawns new realities, then the bond between two people isn't a single linear story. It's a vast, shimmering web of potential connections, each thread representing a different way their lives could have intertwined. Think about how you met your closest friend or your partner. It likely involved a series of seemingly chance events, a decision to go to a specific party, a last-minute change of plans, a missed train that led to an unexpected conversation. In a single reality view, we call this fate or luck, but in a multiverse, it's all happening. There's a branch where you arrived at that party on time and left before they ever showed up. Another where you were too shy to say hello, and another where that first conversation sparked a connection that changed everything. Your relationship in this reality is precious not because it's the only one, but because it's the one you are consciously experiencing together. This leads to a beautiful yet complex redefinition of a soulmate. The classical idea of one perfect person destined for you dissolves in the face of infinite possibilities. Instead, you likely have what we could call quantum soulmates, multiple individuals across the multiverse with whom you share a profoundly deep and compatible connection. The person you're with in this branch might be one of them, but there could be others in different branches, people you never met here, or someone you met but the timing was wrong, or a version of your current partner who made slightly different choices that led to an even deeper harmony. This isn't a depressing thought, it's a celebration of potential. It means the capacity for profound love isn't a scarce resource limited to one person. It's a fundamental pattern of connection that can manifest in countless ways across the cosmos, and you are fortunate enough to be experiencing one of its magnificent expressions right now. Naturally, this introduces unique challenges for commitment. In a world where every argument could branch into a universe where you broke up, and every moment of neglect could create a timeline where the relationship withers, how do you stay present? The fear of a better version of your relationship existing elsewhere could be paralyzing. This is where the concept of conscious commitment becomes paramount. Choosing to be with someone isn't about ignoring the infinite other possibilities. It's about actively and repeatedly choosing to nurture this specific branch. It's about recognizing that while other beautiful connections exist, you are dedicating your energy and intention to making this shared reality the most meaningful and fulfilling version it can be. The goal shifts from finding a perfect, static partnership to collaboratively writing a beautiful story within your branch, knowing that your daily actions are actively steering your shared probability wave toward outcomes of understanding, growth, and joy. Looking forward, we can envision technologies that would emerge to help us navigate this complex new landscape of love. Just as we might use quantum simulations for career counseling, we could develop sophisticated relationship path mappers. Imagine a couple considering a major life decision like moving countries or having a child, sitting down with a counselor who operates this technology. The device wouldn't predict their future, but would instead visualize the most probable branching outcomes of their choice. A holographic tree would blossom before them, showing clusters of branches where the move brings them closer through shared adventure, but also clusters where the stress leads to isolation and resentment. The counselor's role wouldn't be to tell them what to do, but to help them see the potential pitfalls and opportunities within each path, equipping them with communication tools and strategies to consciously guide their relationship toward the healthier clusters of probability. It turns relationship therapy from fixing a broken past to proactively architecting a desired future. We might even see the development of personal resonance monitors, wearable devices that don't track steps, but the subtle quantum emotional field between two people. These devices could alert you to moments where your interactions are creating a high probability branch for misunderstanding or distance, giving you a chance to pause, recalibrate, and choose words or actions that steer you back toward a branch of connection. It sounds like science fiction, but it's rooted in the idea of making the invisible, interconnected nature of our choices tangible. In a multiverse, love is no longer a static state you find yourself in. It's a dynamic, living thing that you cultivate with intention at every single fork in the road, a conscious choice to walk the same path together out of an infinity of possibilities. Now, let's bring this incredibly personal by exploring the most intimate frontier of all, our own health and medicine. In a world built on quantum possibility, the entire foundation of healthcare would undergo a revolution more profound than the discovery of germs or DNA. Today, a doctor diagnoses an illness and prescribes a treatment based on the assumption of a single, definite reality. But if our very biology is subject to quantum fluctuations, then a disease isn't a fixed state, it's a probability. Imagine going to a clinic complaining of persistent fatigue. A classical blood test might come back inconclusive, but a quantum medical scanner wouldn't look for a single result. Instead, it would analyze the probability wave of your cellular state, revealing that across your most probable branches, you have a 65% chance of developing a specific autoimmune condition, a 20% chance of it being a rare metabolic issue, and a 15% chance of it being purely stress-related. Your diagnosis isn't a yes or no, it's a spectrum of potential futures for your body. This transforms treatment from a one-size-fits-all solution to a form of probabilistic steering. A medication wouldn't be prescribed with the expectation that it will definitely work. Instead, your doctor would consult a vast multiversal medical database and tell you, this drug shows an 80% efficacy across branches with your specific quantum biomarker signature. However, in 15% of branches, it causes negligible effects, and in 5%, it triggers a mild adverse reaction. Let's start you on it and use a personal quantum monitor to see which branch we're actively guiding you toward. The goal of medicine shifts from curing a definite illness to actively nudging your body's quantum state toward the clusters of probability where health is the most likely outcome. A treatment success is measured not by a binary outcome, but by its ability to collapse your body's wave function toward wellness. This leads to the most profound ethical dilemma in multiversal medicine, the concept of branch-specific healing. Consider a patient with a terminal, untreatable illness in this reality. With advanced quantum diagnostics, a doctor might identify a parallel branch where a genetic mutation occurred differently, making that version of the patient responsive to an experimental therapy. The monumental ethical question becomes, is it permissible or even obligatory to attempt a cross-branch intervention? Could we develop a technology that doesn't just treat the patient in front of us, but somehow borrows the biochemical solution from the healthier version of themselves in a neighboring reality? The logistics are unimaginable, but the principle forces us to confront whether our duty to heal extends beyond our local branch to the well-being of our multi-dimensional self. It redefines the Hippocratic Oath on a cosmic scale. Speculating on the technology that could make this possible takes us into the realm of breathtaking futurism. We might see the development of biostate synchronizers. These wouldn't be machines that move physical objects between worlds, but devices that can subtly influence the quantum vibrational frequency of a patient's body to resonate with or attune to the healthier state of their counterpart in a more favorable branch. Think of it like tuning two guitars to the same note. The device wouldn't teleport a cure. It would help the patient's own biology remember or align with a state of health that already exists within their broader quantum existence. The healing doesn't come from an external drug, but from an internal resonance with a well version of the self. Furthermore, we could invent probability pharmacotherapy. Instead of chemical compounds designed to have one effect, future drugs could be engineered at the quantum level to be superposed themselves. A single pill could exist in a state of containing both a standard drug and its antagonist. Upon ingestion, the pill's wave function would collapse based on the specific quantum biological state of the patient's body at that exact moment, effectively self-selecting the most appropriate chemical pathway. It's a medication that chooses its own effect based on the patient's immediate need, offering a truly personalized form of treatment that adapts in real time. This wouldn't just treat the disease, it would treat the specific probability of the disease as it manifests in that individual's unique branching path. The entire paradigm of health shifts from fighting against a fixed illness to dancing with a spectrum of possibilities, using technology to guide the body toward its most harmonious expression. This shifts our perspective on environmental crises from inevitable tragedies to a spectrum of probabilities we can actively influence. Imagine a world grappling with the aftermath of a devastating hurricane. In our classical view, it's a singular disaster with a fixed set of consequences, but through the lens of superposition, that event is merely one branch. There are countless adjacent realities where the hurricane weakened at the last moment, veered out to sea, or even where the community's infrastructure was robust enough to withstand it with minimal damage. The catastrophe isn't the only story. It's one outcome in a vast fan of possibilities, and our collective actions determine which branch we collectively experience. This doesn't diminish the suffering in the branch where it happened, but it empowers us with a radical new form of agency, suggesting that avoiding such futures isn't about rewriting the past, but about consciously steering our present toward more favorable probability clusters. The responsibility this places on humanity is both immense and liberating. Every policy enacted, every innovation adopted, and every consumer choice made becomes more than just a local action. It's a vote for a particular version of the future. A government deciding to invest heavily in renewable energy isn't just lowering carbon emissions in one timeline. It's actively increasing the probability weight of an entire branch of reality where energy is clean, air quality is high, and the worst effects of climate change are mitigated. Conversely, a decision to prioritize short-term economic gain over environmental protection strengthens the branches where ecological systems continue to degrade, leading to more frequent and severe crises. We are, in a very real sense, the gardeners of the multiverse, constantly pruning some potential futures while nurturing others into full bloom with our daily choices. This collective steering requires a global consciousness we haven't yet achieved, a recognition that our individual actions contribute to a shared probability wave for the entire planet. To even begin this work, we would need a completely new class of technology, planetary state monitors. These wouldn't be simple climate models predicting one path forward. They would be vast, quantum-based sensing networks designed to map the Earth's macro-scale superposition. Imagine a global array of satellites and ground stations constantly measuring not just definite conditions like temperature and CO2 levels, but the probability amplitudes of these variables. The output wouldn't be a single forecast of a 3-degree temperature rise by 2100. It would be a dynamic, holographic projection of Earth's future branch tree, showing the most probable clusters of outcomes. We could see that our current trajectory leads to a 60% probability cluster of severe water scarcity, but also that there's a 25% cluster of manageable adaptation and even a 15% cluster of breakthrough technological recovery. This gives us a clear, visual representation of the stakes and a tangible goal: to implement strategies that shrink the probability of undesirable branches and expand the probability of desirable ones. This approach could fundamentally reshape international diplomacy and policy. Climate negotiations would transform from fraught arguments over emissions cuts into collaborative sessions of branch management. Nations would use planetary state monitors to run simulations, showing the global impact of different policy packages on the collective probability wave. A proposal wouldn't just be about what it does for one country, but how it alters the odds for the entire world. We might see the creation of a new global body, a branch probability steering committee, tasked with coordinating efforts to maximize the likelihood of a stable, habitable future for all. The concept of a global citizen takes on a new meaning. It's someone who understands their role in influencing not just their local environment, but the very fabric of reality for all humanity, making choices that contribute to the health of our shared planetary branch. This profound shift from a deterministic universe to a probabilistic multiverse doesn't just challenge science. It resonates deeply with spiritual and philosophical questions that humanity has grappled with for millennia. For centuries, many spiritual traditions have suggested that reality is far more fluid and interconnected than it appears. And now, the language of quantum physics provides a startlingly modern metaphor for these ancient ideas. Concepts like fate, karma, or divine will are often thought of as a singular, predetermined path orchestrated by a higher power. But what if superposition offers a more nuanced view? Rather than a fixed destiny, these concepts could be interpreted as the conscious navigation of a probability wave. Your fate isn't a single, pre-written script you're forced to follow, but a range of potential destinies, and your choices, your actions, and your awareness are what collapse those possibilities into your lived experience. In this light, karma transforms from a simple system of cosmic reward and punishment into a more complex process of steering your consciousness toward certain vibrational frequencies or clusters of probability, attracting experiences that resonate with your intentions and actions across the branching multiverse. This perspective finds a powerful echo in Eastern philosophies, particularly Buddhism. The Buddhist concept of pratityasamutpada, or dependent origination, teaches that all phenomena arise in dependence upon a vast, intricate web of causes and conditions. Nothing exists independently. Everything is interconnected and in a constant state of flux. This is remarkably similar to the quantum view of particles having no independent state until they are measured, and their fates becoming entangled across space and, in the many worlds view, across realities. The Buddhist idea of anatta, or non-self, which suggests that what we perceive as a solid, singular ego is an illusion, aligns strikingly with the multiversal identity crisis we explored. If countless versions of you are making different choices, then the search for one true, fixed self is indeed a futile endeavor, pointing toward a more fluid, process-oriented understanding of existence, just as Buddhism has advocated for over 2 millennia. We can also look to the Hindu concept of Brahman, the ultimate, unchanging reality amidst and beyond the world of illusion, or Maya. The ever-branching multiverse of possibilities could be seen as a magnificent expression of Maya, the dazzling, complex play of forms that we mistake for solid reality. Our conscious journey through one branch is the experience of Leela, the divine play of the cosmos. Meanwhile, the underlying quantum field, the wave function that never collapses and contains all possibilities, bears a poetic resemblance to Brahman itself, the singular, unified ground of all being from which the myriad forms of the manifest world arise. This isn't to say that physics is proving religion, but rather that both disciplines, in their own languages, are pointing toward a reality that is far more mysterious, interconnected, and magnificent than our everyday senses can perceive. This fusion of science and spirituality invites a new kind of existential philosophy, one that can hold the tension between infinite possibility and personal responsibility. It suggests that the purpose of life may not be to discover a preordained meaning, but to actively participate in the co-creation of meaning within your local branch of reality. Your spiritual practice, whether it's meditation, prayer, or acts of compassion, becomes a technology of consciousness, a way to fine-tune your awareness to quiet the noise of the classical world and to align your intentions with the most harmonious and fulfilling probabilities available to you. It empowers you to see yourself not as a passive victim of circumstance, but as an active participant in a cosmic dance of potential, with the agency to collaborate with the universe in shaping a reality worth experiencing. The very notion of leaping between these branches ignites the imagination, pointing toward a future where the ultimate frontier isn't space, but state space itself. We're not talking about rockets and planets, but about technologies that could allow for conscious navigation between superposed realities. Imagine a device, perhaps called a quantum resonance chamber or a state bridge, that doesn't move your physical body through the void, but rather recalibrates your conscious awareness to synchronize with a different vibrational frequency of reality, a neighboring branch where history played out slightly differently. This wouldn't be a physical portal you step through, but a sophisticated interface where you lie down, the chamber hums to life, and your perception of the world around you gently dissolves and reassembles into a new configuration. The room's architecture might shimmer and subtly reform, the color of the walls might shift, and the data on a nearby screen would flicker and display entirely new information. You haven't traveled in space, you've tuned your consciousness to a different channel on the cosmic dial. The potential for tourism is staggering, moving far beyond any historical reenactment or virtual reality. This would be the ultimate authentic experience. You could visit a branch where the Library of Alexandria never burned, spending days lost in its endless scrolls of knowledge lost to our history. You could walk the streets of a world where renewable energy was perfected in the 1970s, breathing air untouched by fossil fuel emissions and seeing cities seamlessly integrated with nature. There could be tours to branches with minor, delightful divergences, a reality where a different author wrote your favorite novel, offering a chance to discuss the characters with the creator, or a world where a beloved musician never passed away, allowing you to finally attend that concert you missed. The ethical implications, however, would be immense. Would this be respectful observation or a form of cosmic colonialism? Would these alternate societies be treated as living museums for our entertainment? And what rights would the citizens of these branches have? They are just as real, with their own autonomy and cultures, and the sudden arrival of tourists from a dimension they didn't know existed could be incredibly disruptive or even perceived as an invasion. This leads us to the most classic and terrifying risk, the paradox. In stories, meddling with time often creates a logical inconsistency that unravels reality. But in a many-worlds framework, true paradoxes might be impossible because you're not rewriting a single timeline. You're simply moving between already existing ones. If you traveled to a branch and prevented your own grandparents from meeting, you wouldn't erase yourself. Instead, you'd simply be in a branch where, for local inhabitants, that couple never met. The you in that branch was never born, but your own consciousness arrived from elsewhere, so you would still exist as an anomaly, a foreign consciousness in a body that doesn't locally belong. The real risk isn't a universe-ending paradox, but the profound psychological and social disruption of introducing an external element into a closed system. You could inadvertently introduce pathogens for which that world has no immunity, or share technology that destabilizes their entire geopolitical balance, effectively becoming an agent of chaos in an otherwise stable reality. Perhaps the most personal and haunting danger is the complete loss of identity. If you jump between branches too frequently, your sense of a continuous self could begin to fray. Your memories would become a tangled collage of conflicting histories. You might clearly remember a childhood pet that, in your current branch, never existed. You could recall a deep conversation with a friend who here is a stranger. This constant cognitive dissonance could lead to a severe dissociative disorder where you can no longer trust your own memories or sense of what is real. You might become a permanent outsider, unable to fully belong anywhere because your lived experience is literally multi-dimensional. The ultimate fear wouldn't be getting stuck in a wrong reality, but losing the ability to distinguish any one reality as your own, becoming a ghost of probabilities without a home branch to call your own. The pursuit of infinite experience could cost you the very core of your being, leaving you as a collection of echoes without a source. And this reimagining of reality wouldn't just transform our serious institutions, it would completely revolutionize how we play, tell stories, and seek entertainment. The gaming industry, always at the forefront of adopting new technologies, would undergo its most radical transformation yet, moving beyond mere virtual reality into the realm of actualized possibility. Forget open-world games with a few scripted endings. We're talking about fully immersive experiences built on a genuine quantum architecture. In these environments, every single choice you make wouldn't just trigger a pre-programmed response from the game's developers. It would literally spawn a new, unique branch of the game world. That moment of hesitation before picking a dialogue option, the path you choose to sneak through an enemy camp, whether you spare a character or show them mercy, each decision would fork the entire narrative, creating a parallel game instance where the other choice played out. These wouldn't be illusions. The game's quantum engine would be generating a legitimate superposition of states, and your consciousness, through your avatar, would collapse one path into your experienced reality. You're not playing a game with multiple endings. You are living inside a story with near-infinite middles, where no two players would ever have the same experience, and even your own second playthrough would be fundamentally, irrevocably different. This technology would give rise to a new art form, the quantum narrative. Filmmakers and writers would become architects of probability rather than authors of a fixed plot. Imagine a movie where you, the viewer, aren't just a passive observer. Wearing a lightweight neuro-sync headset, your subtle emotional responses and unconscious biases measured through biometrics would actively influence the story's progression. In a thriller, your moment of suspicion toward a particular character might increase the probability of that character being revealed as the villain in your branch of the film. Your feeling of compassion for a secondary character could steer the narrative toward giving them a more prominent role. You wouldn't press a button to choose. The story would breathe and evolve in response to your engagement, making you a co-creator of the drama unfolding on screen. The concept of spoilers would become meaningless, as discussing the plot would be like comparing dreams. Everyone experienced a different, deeply personal version of the same starting premise. Live events would be utterly transformed, becoming unique for every single attendee. Picture a massive quantum-enhanced concert. The performance on stage exists in a state of superposition with different setlists, lighting sequences, and even musical improvisations all coexisting as potentialities. As the lead singer moves across the stage, the specific angle from which you view them, the intensity of your cheers measured by localized audio sensors, and the collective emotional wave of your section of the crowd could all act as observational inputs that collapse the performance into your specific experience. The person standing 10 feet to your left in a different vibrational pocket of the audience might hear a completely different ballad, see a laser show that never manifested for you, and leave having witnessed a concert that was, for all intents and purposes, a one-of-a-kind event. Your experience is curated not by an algorithm, but by the subtle interplay of your presence and attention with the quantum state of the performance itself. This pervasive, authentic branching would inevitably lead to a profound blurring of the lines between the games we play, the stories we consume, and the reality we inhabit. When your entertainment platform can generate convincingly real and complex alternate worlds that respond to your every thought and action, the temptation to retreat into these crafted realities could become overwhelming. Why grapple with the often messy and unforgiving probabilities of base reality when you can step into a quantum sim where your choices consistently steer outcomes toward empowerment, romance, or victory? This isn't just an escape, it's the ability to inhabit a reality that feels more responsive, more meaningful, and more tailored to your desires than the external world might ever be. We could see the rise of new social classes defined not by wealth, but by access to the most sophisticated and desirable probability engines, realities within realities that offer a perceived quality of life surpassing that of the ordinary world. This erosion of a shared, objective experience poses a deep philosophical challenge to the nature of community and art. If everyone is experiencing a personalized, branching version of a film, a game, or a concert, what remains to bind us together in shared cultural moments? The water cooler discussion about last night's episode becomes impossible if everyone saw a different narrative unfold. Our collective myths and stories, which have always served as a foundational glue for societies, risk fragmenting into billions of individual, isolated narratives. The very concept of a classic or a canon could dissolve, replaced by an endless expanse of personalized variations. This pushes us toward a future where our entertainment is no longer a shared refuge from reality, but a collection of bespoke realities themselves, challenging us to find new ways to connect and commune in a world where everyone is, quite literally, living in their own world. Now, if our reality is truly a constantly branching tree of possibilities, our most fundamental systems of order, our laws and our governments, would need to be completely reinvented from the ground up. Our entire concept of justice is built on a linear model of cause and effect. A crime is committed, evidence is gathered to establish a singular truth about that event, and a punishment is meted out based on that definitive version of reality. But how do you prosecute a crime when every action spawns a universe where the opposite also happened? Imagine a theft occurs. In one branch, a security guard was distracted by a flickering light, a tiny quantum event, and the thief got away. In the branch right next to it, the light was stable, the guard was alert, and the thief was caught red-handed. Both events are equally real. So, does the thief in the successful branch bear any responsibility for the actions of their counterpart in the failed branch? Can you even hold one instance of a person accountable when their actions are, in a sense, a probabilistic pattern across the multiverse? This forces the creation of an entirely new legal philosophy. Courts would shift from being arbiters of a single truth to becoming interpreters of probability waves. A trial wouldn't just ask, did the defendant commit this act? It would need to ask, what was the probability amplitude of the defendant committing this act across the relevant branch cluster, and did their conscious intent strengthen those probabilities? Evidence would include not just physical clues from our branch, but data from quantum reality monitors that map the event's probability field. The verdict might not be a simple guilty or not guilty, but a percentage, a determination that the defendant's actions made this negative outcome 70% probable, and therefore their sentence should reflect that percentage of the maximum penalty. It's a justice system that abandons certainty for a more nuanced and arguably more accurate model of responsibility. This new legal framework would necessitate a parallel evolution in governance. How does a single government rule a population that is constantly fracturing into new versions of itself? An election wouldn't have one winner, it would have every possible winner, each leading in their own branch. A law passed in one reality might be overturned by a different parliament in another. The very idea of a unified nation-state begins to crumble under the weight of infinite divergence. We might see the rise of a new form of administration focused not on controlling outcomes but on managing branch stability. Governments could become like gardeners, carefully pruning the probability tree to minimize wildly destructive branches, those where a pandemic goes unchecked or a war breaks out, and gently guiding the collective consciousness toward clusters of reality that promise greater stability and well-being for the most people. Their success wouldn't be measured by economic growth in one timeline, but by their ability to maximize the probability of peace and prosperity across the entire accessible multiverse. This naturally leads to the unprecedented challenge of branch interference. What happens if one branch develops a technology that allows it to detect or even slightly influence events in a neighboring reality? This could be the ultimate geopolitical nightmare. A resource-starved branch might attempt to siphon energy from a more prosperous one, or a militant reality could see other branches as territories to be conquered rather than parallel existences. To prevent this, we would need the first truly multiversal treaties, agreements on non-interference and mutual respect between branches. This would require a diplomatic corps unlike any other, staffed by ambassadors who don't represent different countries but different versions of Earth itself. They would negotiate not over borders or trade deals, but over the fundamental rules of engagement between realities, establishing protocols for what constitutes an act of aggression across the vibrational layers of existence. Global cooperation would no longer be a lofty ideal. It would be an absolute necessity for survival in a multi-branch reality. Envision the courtroom of the future in this world. The judge's bench might be surrounded not by a jury of peers, but by a shimmering holographic display of the event's probability tree. The prosecution and defense wouldn't just argue over what did happen, they would debate the weight of what could have happened. A defense attorney might argue that their client's actions, while harmful in this branch, created a 90% probability cluster of positive outcomes in adjacent realities, that their intent was to steer reality toward a better future, and this negative result was an unfortunate but necessary fluctuation. The entire process would be less about assigning blame for a single event and more about evaluating a person's overall impact on the shape of the probability field, considering their actions across the vast tapestry of the multiverse to determine their fitness to remain in the general population of this particular branch. Ultimately, this system would demand a radical new social contract, one built on a profound and humbling understanding of our interconnectedness. While we might be isolated in our individual branches, we are all part of a greater, multi-dimensional whole. The person you disagree with politically, the criminal who seems irredeemable, the loved one you lost, they all exist in other forms in other worlds. This perspective could foster an incredible sense of compassion, knowing that no one story is ever truly over and no potential is ever completely lost. The goal of law and governance would shift from punishment and control to stewardship and guidance, helping the consciousness in this branch make choices that lead to a more harmonious and fulfilling local reality, while respecting the infinite journey of the self across the cosmos. This brings us to one of the most profound questions at the heart of all this. If consciousness truly is the engine that collapses possibilities into a single reality, what happens when multiple observers are involved? We've all experienced a shared reality, a concert where everyone hears the same song, a sporting event where thousands see the same goal. But if reality is subjective and shaped by observation, how do we all agree on what we're seeing? This isn't just a physics problem, it's the very glue that holds our society together. The answer might lie in a concept known as quantum consensus. Imagine a simple object like a red apple sitting on a table. You look at it and your observation collapses its wave function into a definite state, red, round, and ripe. Now I walk into the room and look at the same apple. My observation doesn't create a new reality. It simply confirms the one you've already established. Our consciousnesses become entangled with the object and with each other, locking in a shared experience. We've reached a consensus on the apple state, and that consensus reinforces the reality we both perceive. This is how we build a stable, collective world from the quantum soup of possibilities. Our agreements, our measurements, and our shared attention act like pillars, holding up the structure of the reality we experience together. This process of building consensus reality happens on a massive scale every single day. Think about the price of gold, the outcome of an election, or the fact that a stop sign means halt. These aren't inherently true facts of the universe. They are realities we have all collectively agreed upon through a constant, unconscious process of observational collapse. The financial markets are a perfect example, a stunningly complex system that exists only because millions of people simultaneously observe and agree on the value of abstract concepts like stocks and currencies. Their collective belief and attention quite literally hold that entire reality in place. If everyone suddenly stopped believing in the value of a dollar, its wave function would effectively decohere, and that shared economic reality would vanish. This gives a whole new meaning to the phrase, the power of the people. We aren't just voting for leaders or influencing trends. We are participating in a continuous, collaborative act of cosmic creation, using our shared focus to manifest the world around us. With that incredible power, however, comes a deep and often overlooked responsibility. If our observation helps shape reality, then what we choose to observe and how we choose to observe it matters immensely. This transforms mindfulness from a personal wellness practice into a fundamental civic duty. When we collectively focus our attention on fear, division, and conflict, we aren't just reporting on those events. We are actively amplifying their probability and pulling that version of reality into sharper focus. We are, in a sense, voting for that reality with our eyeballs and our emotional energy. Conversely, when we choose to observe and celebrate acts of kindness, innovation, and cooperation, we strengthen those probability waves, making a more harmonious world more likely to manifest. This isn't about ignoring problems, it's about consciously directing our observational power towards solutions and positive potentials. The media we consume, the conversations we have, and the things we give our mental energy to are not passive activities. They are active choices that influence the collective wave function, steering the entire ship of our shared reality toward either turbulence or calm waters. Looking toward the future, we can already see the seeds of technologies designed to harness and enhance this collective observational power. Social media platforms and global news networks are primitive, often chaotic examples. They focus our collective attention, but they often do it in a way that promotes polarization, amplifying the most extreme probabilities. But what if we could design technology to help us observe more wisely? Imagine a platform not built for virality and outrage, but for conscious consensus building. A global reality dashboard that uses quantum-inspired algorithms to map the world's probability waves in real time. It wouldn't just show you news, it would visualize the potential futures we are collectively creating. You could see that a developing political crisis currently has a 60% probability of leading to conflict, but also that a 40% cluster of branches exists where diplomacy prevails. The platform could then offer tools to consciously strengthen that more peaceful probability, guiding users toward focused meditation on peace, connecting them with diplomatic organizations, or highlighting stories of successful conflict resolution. This turns the internet from a distraction engine into a planetary steering wheel. On a more personal level, we might see the development of attention amplifiers or shared observational tech. Picture a couple using a device that allows them to literally see the probability waves of their relationship. Through a shared augmented reality interface, they could visualize how a critical comment increases the probability of an argument branch, while a moment of appreciation strengthens the branches of connection. It would make the abstract consequences of their interactions viscerally real, training them to become better, more responsible observers of each other. In a scientific setting, this could evolve into global observation projects where millions of people voluntarily focus their intention on a single quantum experiment, attempting to see if a mass consciousness effort can influence the outcome in a statistically significant way. We are moving from being passive observers of a predetermined world to active participants in a cosmic creative process, and the technology we build will either be a catalyst for collective chaos or a tool for intentional, benevolent co-creation. The responsibility is ours, and it begins with a simple but radical shift in awareness, recognizing that to look at something is not just to see it, but to play a part in making it so. So as we bring this incredible journey to a close, it's clear that the idea of living in a state of quantum superposition isn't just a wild thought experiment, it's a paradigm that reshapes everything. From the intimate choices of our daily lives to the vast structures of our societies, this perspective invites us to see ourselves not as fixed beings on a single path, but as dynamic participants in an infinite tapestry of possibility. Whether through the lens of many worlds, quantum consciousness, or even a cosmic simulation, the implications are nothing short of revolutionary. They challenge our deepest notions of identity, responsibility, and connection, suggesting that every moment is a branching point, every decision a new universe, and every observer a co-creator of reality itself. This isn't just about understanding physics, it's about reimagining what it means to be human in a cosmos brimming with potential. It asks us to consider that our lives are far richer and more complex than we ever dreamed, woven into a grand, multi-dimensional pattern where every version of us is living out every version of our story. The thrill of this idea is not just in its scope but in its intimacy, the realization that your life, with all its unique joys and struggles, is both singular and infinite, deeply personal and universally connected. It's a concept that dissolves regret into curiosity, fear into wonder, and isolation into a profound sense of belonging to something greater than we can fully comprehend. As you go about your day, I encourage you to carry this sense of possibility with you. Look at the world around you not as a fixed set of circumstances, but as one beautiful expression of a reality that is still unfolding, still being chosen, still being observed into existence. Wonder about the branches you're on and the ones you might have taken. Think about the other yous out there, living the lives you didn't, and consider what their experiences might whisper back to you about your own path. This is more than a theory, it's an invitation to engage with your existence in a more mindful, expansive, and empowered way. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you could peek into a parallel branch of your own life, which moment would you want to see an alternate outcome for? What path not taken intrigues you the most? Share your stories and questions in the comments below. Let's dive into this fascinating discussion together. And if your mind is buzzing with these ideas, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're just scratching the surface of the future here, exploring the technologies and lifestyles that will define our tomorrows. This is a journey we're on together, and I can't wait to see where our curiosity takes us next.